you at www.thepowerofvoices.com. Jesse Terrero, the Brown Beauty, is back on duty on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a Friday afternoon. It is Thursday, trash day at my house. They picked up the trash. That's how I know it's Thursday at my house, because if I don't move my car, I get a ticket. And so I've gotten plenty of those tickets. And I woke up this morning and my car was parked in my front lawn. And I don't know how it got there. All I know is I didn't get a ticket. So it's trash day at my house. It's Thursday in Southern California and all around America. Good to have you along. We're in the last day of the RNC convention. And Mr. Donald Trump, the Trumpster himself, the trumpet man, the Trump-alike, the Trump troglodyte, the Trumpter dude is going to talk tonight. And so that's going to be kind of exciting to see what he says. I hope he just is the Donald Trump that we've grown to love. Oh, yes, I do. Anyhow, that's going to be happening tonight and at the RNC. So we may talk a little bit about that here at 424-227-9461. But we're going to have some fun today as we start to approach the weekend in Southern California. It's the Jesse T Show, Monday through Friday from 5 to 6. Good to have you along. As we get to the point here, straight on the point, live at 5. And we've got lots of things to enjoy and a lot of things to be blessed for and have gratitude for. I was just enjoying the beautiful day it is here in Southern California. Blue skies. It's not too hot. It's kind of a typical summer day in the 90s in the valleys and in the high 70s and low 80s around the beaches of Southern California here. So it's actually a kind of common, very typical July day. It has been very hot here in the Southern California region. Last couple, 2 or 3 weeks, we've seen temperatures, 101, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if you're out into the desert areas, the farthest reaches of the county, like Lancaster or way out there in San Bernardino County or Riverside County, excuse me, the temperatures are even higher. At least we have experienced in the last couple of weeks. But right now, it's a beautiful day in Southern California. Kind of the days people come here to enjoy themselves tremendously. If you're watching us, great, then you know where we're at. If you're not watching us and you're just listening to us, we welcome you to take our live TV digital feed on our digital broadcasting network. It's growing every week. And of course, with www.thepowerofvoices.com, broadcasting TV in a digital way on StreamUp, on YouTube Live, and also on www.thepowerofvoices.com Facebook site, so you can check us out there. And AV, a TV Live entertainment channel at facebook.com/Jesse Terrero. You can check us out there as well as just take our feed here at thepowerofvoices.com. And we enjoy your listenership and we enjoy your viewership very much. And we appreciate you kind of chiming in and listening and participating with all the great shows that we have here at the radio station. And we are a global distribution network radio station, so we're not only heard here in Southern California, but we are heard all across this great nation and all across the world as we set things up and get things going in that respect. All right, so it's good to have you with us, and let's just jump right into it right now. A couple of things I will just in review at the RNC. Tonight is the last night of the RNC. Then I believe it's next week. They're going to be in Philadelphia with the DNC. And boy, the fireworks are going to fly there as they flew over the last several days here on the RNC. So this makes for great entertainment. It is the greatest thing to watch, our American political system, unlike no other in the world. It is just unbelievable how we come together and how we are able to solidify some sort of logic and common sense out of everything that seems to be completely falling apart and break. The rest of the world, I've been watching the BBC a lot, and I've been watching some other broadcasts from what we can get out of China and of course, in Asia and stuff. And it's just amazing how they look at us. I mean, they think we're just crazy. Crazy. We got cowboy hats. We got people pointing fingers. We got people yelling and screaming and burning flags. We got police. We got bikers. We've got everything. We got everything. We got evangelicals. We've got people that look so perfect they make the Ken doll look sloppy. I mean, these people are just shining perfect. I mean, what a system we have here in this country. And the rest of the world just looks at us and goes, and that's America? But boy, y'all still want to come here, don't you? Yeah, that's right, you do, because it's the greatest country that's ever been developed by human mankind, womankind, Homo sapien, Homo erectus, Homo whatever. It is the greatest country that has been ever developed, this thing we call God's blue-green earth. And our country, America, is just an experiment that continues to expand and change and adjust and grow. And boy, at least we can have open dialogue without shooting each other in the arena. Because when you watch other countries and some of the violence that bestows upon them, oh, it's so good to be part of our political system. So we saw the first half here come up here with the RNC. And just in looking back, a lot of folks really don't know what the RNC stands for. Well, it's the Republican National Committee, the Republican Party. And what a lot of folks don't know about the Republican Party, it was not here during the Founding Fathers' Day, during Jefferson and Adams and Monroe and all of those cats. It wasn't here. It only came about around 1740, 1745, 1750. It was a party that was quite different than it is today, the Republican Party, and it solidified itself around Lincoln. The Whigs, the WHIG, and the Democratic Party were the two huge parties here in America at the time. And the Whig Party went way back with the Democratic Party. I don't know why they called it the Whig Party, but that's what it was called. It didn't have anything to do with those big wigs. It had something to do with it's an acronym for something else. I don't know what that is. Yes, there is something I don't know. So if you know what the Whig Party stood for, look it up on Wikipedia for me and chime in to us here at ABTV Live. Our broadcast facility at our digital broadcasting site or on powerofvoices.com, and let me know what the Whig Party, WHIG, stands for. But it was a party, a big, strong, powerful party, and they were actually against slavery. The Whig Party was actually they were in between whether or not they liked slavery or they didn't like slavery. Mostly the party was in the North, and the Democratic Party was in the South. And the Democrat Party was pro-slavery. They did not want things to change. So the Democratic Party really, in a nutshell, without getting too involved in the historical lesson here, overlooking a lot of small nuances, but in the great scheme of the general conversation, the Democratic Party was pro-slavery. And what the Whig Party, which turned in and dissolved itself into the Republican Party, was basically against slavery, okay, in that respect. And so when the divide happened with the Civil War, what took place was it was a conflict of interests that took place. And when you talk a little bit about the Whig Party and the political party that it was, it dated back quite a long period of time. And in that respect, I mean, we go all the way back into the beginnings of the 19th century, the early 1830s. And it was a very strong and powerful party. It was the party of President Andrew Jackson. Now, Andrew Jackson is a guy who's on the $20 bill that they're going to be replacing pretty soon, which I don't think they should have ever done. I think they should have just created a $30 bill and put the woman on a $30 bill. It's just as easy to create a $30. Let's make the woman more valuable than Andrew Jackson. I mean, if we're going to do something, let's just do it that way. But that's a whole nother topic that we can get involved in later on, because I don't think we should take anybody's face off our dollar bills, period, end quote, in that respect. But
a $30 bill.
Oh, that would be cool. A $30 bill. A $30 bill. It's halfway kind of between 20 and 50. So let's do a $30 bill. It'd be easy. 3 30s
Maybe
is 90.
75. How about 75?
Wow, $30 bill. No, we can't have a woman be close to a $100 bill. That
Why?
can't, because
Come on.
no, there has to be some
How
distance.
about
in it.
125, 150?
Now that becomes too complicated for Jesse Torrero's head. Okay, and you're in the world
about
according to Torrero.
$200 bill.
No. We can't have any $200 bills, because then you cut a couple Benjamins out, and your money gets short in your pocket with one $200 bill. They actually have a $1 million bill. They have a $10 million bill. Did you know that? Yes, they do. And here,
Didn't they get rid of the $500 bill?
they got rid of them for our practical use, but
Right.
in the governmental use, and it turned into the electronic dollars.
Right,
They used to actually, the government used to actually write $1 million bill. They would send
Really?
but with the electronic money we
right.
have now,
There's
they
no
don't
need
need.
for
There's
that.
no
Yeah.
need for that. It's just they
Right.
transfer billions of dollars now, but yeah, they eliminated those
I'd
kind
like
of
to have
down.
$21 million bills.
Wouldn't you like to have that?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I think that would be great.
I'd like to walk into the bank and say, I'd like to make a deposit, please.
Yeah, right now I just
Yes.
like to have 4 quarters.
No problem.
in
Mr.
my
Michaels,
pocket.
how much would you like to deposit? I have $21 million bills.
Right, that'd be really good to have.
Yeah, that would be cool.
I would ask you for a job then. Mr. Michaels, thank you for making your deposit. I only make $47,000 a year here. Tell you what, Mr. Michaels, I'll do your laundry, I'll do your clothes, I'll wash your car.
No,
I'll make sure
I just want you to count my money every day.
every day. I'll count it every day.
Every
from
day.
the time I get up.
That's right.
Give me $49.50 a year, and I'll do it.
No, I'll give you $65.25.
$65,250.
No, $65,025.
No problem. I want a $30 bill though. Thank you
Forget
very
about
much. Andrew Jackson, and President Andrew Jackson was the Whig president. So that was a party that lasted for a long time. And when you really think about it, the founders of the Whigs, the American Whigs, was way back in 1776. That was more of a revolutionary coalition of people in 1776, and they were called the American Whigs. The party as an electoral process in terms of a party, they got power, but the actual mechanism that they were named after went all the way back to the Revolutionary War, the American Whigs. And that's where you thought the Whigs were, because the Americans had the Whigs and the English had the Whigs. Right. And so that defined the difference. Anyhow, there we go about that. The Republican Party solidified around Lincoln. And because of the breakup of the Whig Party and this new party, a lot of historians will say that left a little opening for Lincoln to kind of slip in there, a guy who had been failing to become elected many, many times as a senator and as a presidential nominee. But this allowed him that ability to kind of slip in there, and the solidification of the Republican Party around him and the ideology against slavery. You see, that was one of his platforms. He was, and the reason why all that took place is because as America was expanding west, out of the Midwest, and as it was expanding west, there were 2 specific states that they didn't know whether they were going to go slavery states or non-slavery states. And it was an argument about these 2 new states that were going to come on board, whether or not they were going to participate in slavery or not. One state wanted, one state didn't. And so the Whig Party kind of broke up over that issue. The Republican Party developed itself, and one state went pro-slavery. The other state went anti-slavery under the Republican Party. All right, so to bring that forward, the Republican Party was a party of anti-slavery. The Democratic Party was a party of pro-slavery. And then we went through the Civil War, and we got out of the Civil War. And Lincoln, if you think about it, Lincoln and Booker T. Washington, these 2 characters were like they were the civil rights guys of their time. when Booker T, part of the railroad in the 1880s, but they were the civil rights guys of their time when they lived on the planet Earth. And Lincoln was so pro anti-slavery that after the Civil War, there was a big problem as to how to govern the South, who really wanted slavery under the Democratic rule. And there was a lot of infighting on how do we set up how are we going to dynamically change a whole ideology that had been there for a long time? What are we going to do? How are we going to impose this? It was really a raucous time, and a lot of argument and a lot of fighting and a lot of finger pointing, and it makes what we do today look really juvenile compared to what they were going through. Once Lincoln was assassinated, the party started changing over the next 50 years or so into the 1920s, the Republican Party. Primarily, it started changing because what happened at the end of the Civil War, we had the Depression of 1873. We couldn't pay for the Civil War as a country. We were broke. And the Depression started in Europe and came over here to America. And when we had that Depression in 1873, it almost lasted 20 years. It made the 29 Depression look silly. And whatever we go through today, it makes it look silly. We could not pay for the debt on the Civil War. In other words, the cities couldn't rebuild themselves in the South. The cities couldn't rebuild themselves in the North. We couldn't outfit a military. We couldn't do anything. We were broke. And the industrial barons, Carnegie, Morgan, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt, these guys got together. It was about 5 to 7 of them. And they got together and they essentially bought the United States government, because they created oil and steel and railroads and this kind of power, all right? And so to the point that when Carnegie sold out in his late 80s, in the late 19th century, when he sold out to J.P. Morgan Chase, J.P. Morgan and his collection of investors, they had about 5 or 7 of them, when he sold out to him, then J.P. Morgan became very wealthy, and they paid off, at the end of the century, they paid off the debt service in cash for the Civil War. And that's when the Republican Party started to change, because the industrialists felt that with the mass exodus of people that left the South and came up north, the neighborhoods and the education and the health and the ability to satisfy all the concerns and the needs through this Great Depression that America was going through actually caused more of a problem than what they were getting out of it. So it was purely an economical decision in terms of the Republican Party making an adjustment and a change on how they overall, over 50 years, started looking at the concept of slavery. All right. So at that point, then, what took place was the Democratic Party got the shift of the people over into the Democratic Party, and almost all African-American people, black folks, just shifted within a very fast period of time at the turn of the century by the 1920s. I mean, just a mass amount of people just shifted from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. And that's sort of how the parties have shaped up and how they are and what they are today, just in a very brief, general conversation. Historians out there that are listening to the show, there's a lot of nuance to that. There's a lot of holes to fill, but that's kind of how and where the Republican Party came from the Whig Party, and they were actually pro-anti-slavery. They didn't want slaves originally, and how that transition took place in the beginning of the 20th century, the early 1900s. So by 1920, when it rolled around, pretty much the Democratic Party was a representative party of all folks of color in the country, which were primarily black folks. There weren't a lot of Latinos there in that part of the world of America. They were on the West Coast, but the West Coast, was just starting to open up in 1843 when we got about 10 states. Actually, we got about 6 states in the Mexican-American War in 1843, the Treaty of Guadalupe, which was a war basically about water rights for the West, but turned out to be what gathered up all these states in the West and made them part of the American dialogue. So there you go. Now, the reason why I mention that, because now you understand why and where the Republican Party is today and the changes that they're trying to make, these adjustments that they're trying to make. Now, the DNC is going to be next week, and I believe it starts on Monday, and the DNC is going to be they have an interesting story on how they started. Now, they are really, if you think the grand old party, they go all the way back to the beginning of America. But the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, is coming up. The Democratic Party has a really interesting story on how they came together and were pro-slavery. And it would make sense if they went all the way back to the beginnings of America, because all of our founding forefathers, all of them were wealthy businessmen, landowners. Some of them, they were all first-generation born Americans, except for, even Benjamin Franklin, the oldest one, was a first-generation born American because when they came over from Western Europe, these were the babies of the fathers and the mothers that first came over from Western Europe. And some of them were second generation, the beginning of a second generation of born naturalized American, or national American from the that was not from Europe. So they were all wealthy people, as wealthy as the wealth is today that runs the political systems and the corporations. These people, way back in those days, were the same ilk. They were the owners of land. That was established wealth because that was natural resources. They were the owners of the shipbuilding companies. They were the owners of trade. They were the owners of the companies that build houses and cities and towns. These were very wealthy, educated people in comparison to the society of the time, and they were Democrats, and they all had slaves. Or at the very least, they had indentured servants, like the white slave trade of the Irish. They were indentured servants. And some of them, when they got over here, they never got out of slavery themselves. That's a lost and forgotten story that we can talk about with another time, because that's a whole show when you start talking about groups of people that have been slaves that we completely don't know about, not taught in our history books. It's pretty amazing. So the point is, next week, we really have the oldest party that's going to have their convention next week. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So much about that. But that leads me to talk about immigration in terms of some of the names that people call themselves. When you start going around the world, if you have the opportunity ever to travel, go to a country or two where the culture is different, where the ideology and the concepts of what you're accustomed to are completely different. Go to another place where you can really experience how these people look through their eyes at the world and what they believe in and the smells and tastes and the sounds and the education and the historical perspective and their language. And some of it is just hilarious. There's great comedy in it. And so, of course, we're talking about now in the last 25 or 30 years, we've been talking about actually quite heavily since Iran and the Ayatollahs came back at the end of the Carter administration, that part of the world really jumped on the scene and started affecting America in a negative way. At least we're taught to feel about them in a negative way. Their names, how they name themselves, it's just funny as get all. I mean, I hear some of these names, they just crack me up. And it's like Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden, Osama bin Laden. You know, they must think that like my name, Jesse Glenn Terrero, is weird. They got to think that my name is strange. Or when you go to the Orient, you hear how some of the Koreans or Chinese or Japanese folks, how their tongues and mouths get twisted around into their name, or it's really funny in a lot of ways because we translate everything into our American language, our English language. Everything comes through the looking glass of being American, especially when you're traveling abroad. It comes through the looking glass of that. So there's a terrific skit that was done maybe about 6 or 7 years ago. And it is just filled full of comedy. And one of the greatest actors, Robert De Niro, was asked to do this skit when he did Saturday Night Live on one of the very few occasions. And it has to do with certain names of Arabic kind of understandings. And it is absolutely hilarious. And I want to play that for you just to ease up the day a little bit because I think you'll like it. It's funny. Now, you got to listen closely. And if you have the opportunity to watch this and you're watching it, you can check it out because we're going to run the video feed as well as the audio feed right here on thepowerofvoices.com as we have fun with Islamic type names or Middle Eastern type names right here on the Jesse T Show live at 5, straight to the point.
Our national hotline, we have collected hundreds of names of suspected terrorists, and I'm proud to say that most of these calls have come from high school and college students nationwide. In fact, we received over 475 calls alone regarding this man. My balls is out. We also received calls regarding such nefarious terrorists as Grabber Booby and Haida Salami. And let this be a message to you, Haida Salami. We will not play your dangerous game. We are also currently searching for a man we believe to be an Al-Qaeda lieutenant who's bin Fartin.
Is that the short version? That's the short version. Let's see if we can find the longer version because he continues to go on. And the funny thing about this skit is that I believe at the last minute, at the last part of this skit, they instituted some names that he wasn't ready for, trying to bust, the ever stoic Robert De Niro up. There might be a 6-minute version of this or a 5-minute version of it. And you might want to put the longer version in if you can find it. It's there somewhere for sure. But anyhow, some of the names that he was talking about, my balls are hairy, right? Another one was Grabber Booby. Now, when you think about the context of this, it's just hilarious. I'm going to read some of these off. When I first saw this skit, I was just rolling on the floor. Ida Salami, all right? Yes. Bin Fartin, or this one, his cousin, Ibn Fartin, or his accomplice, I sheet me drawers, all right, and his half brother, Shavish Bush, or suck your queer. yeah, or how about this one? This one is must have harad up your pooper. Or I want to fook you. Can you imagine Robert De Niro reading these things? And these are the ones that they kind of slipped in at the last second because I don't think he was ready for this. They're trying to bust him up. And it started with this one. He's reading along, and I want to fook you. Now, he had to actually look at that when he did it. Or how about this one? Hopefully I can get it. You stroke watch. or this is one that he had out there that I know he had to look at. I'll pull my dick out. Now, when he hit that one, you just saw him trying not to laugh. Or this one, you leaky me dick? You leaky me dick, right? And his cousin, you want me dick? And his second brother, you sucky me dick. I mean, this has got to be one of the all-time favorite, funniest SNL scripts. They go total juvenile delinquent on Robert De Niro, you know, the most stoic, serious actor of our time. He never laughs. He never smiles, right? And they hit him with this stuff. Just absolutely hilarious. This is like juvenile delinquent stuff when you were a kid, right? And you used to go to the International House of Pancakes and you would take the microphone, right? When they had the International House of Pancakes here on the West Coast was like a place where everybody that had a family more than 7 went to the IHOP on Sunday morning or Saturday morning because their breakfast was cheap and it was good too. And you'd hang out front and they'd have a microphone, right? And can you imagine? You walk up to the lady and you put your name down. And my name is Harry. Harry, and my middle name is Mibal. Yeah, Mibal. And you go outside and you wait for your name to be called after a few minutes and party for 4, right? Yeah. Calling out Mibal to Harry. Mibal's a Harry, party of 4. Juvenile delinquent stuff, right? And they throw this at Robert De Niro. So just a little play and twist on how we perceive names in the world and sometimes how funny they are. Now, these, of course, are all made up by the writers, the great writers of Saturday Night Live. But I'm going to start using this stuff, actually, out in the street because that's some seriously off-the-wall stuff. Anyhow, Tony Cox is on. He's got a funny name. Tony Cox. Right. Isaiah Pickett. Check him out on his SoundCloud, Isaiah Pickett, and Isaiah Pickett Official Music. Good to have you along with us. It's Jesse Terrero. The Brown Beauty is on duty. Jesse T with you live at 5, and we are straight on the point. All right, here we go. So this leads me into something that I wanted to chat about that I think is a very serious topic. Because it seems that our prisons in America are filled full of minority people. And our perceptions, and what we just had some fun with, the perceptions of names, how we perceive people to be oftentimes is right on the button. Oftentimes it's not. It's probably about a 50-50 shot either way. Our perception is probably 50% right and maybe 50% wrong. But certainly our prisons in America are incarcerated with certain groups. I was watching Johnny Cash when he did the song from San Quentin. And when he did, that was just one concert. That's the one he's known for, that song from San Quentin. But in reality, Johnny Cash visited many prisons around the country for 5 or 6 or 7 years after that and would do concerts right there. And one of the prerequisites is that there would be no security guards between he and the prisoners. He wanted to have that, that closeness with them because, Johnny spent some time in jail when he was a youngster. So did Merle Haggard. So a lot of these guys, of those old country guys, those great artists, they spent their time in jail too. But when you look out in the audience in 1969, in 1968, as the camera would pan the audience and the prisoners. Now, I know that most of those prisoners were handpicked for some reason or to be there. They probably weren't the most death and killer prisoners. They probably were the prisoners that were on good behavior. But nevertheless, when they panned the audience or they would pan the general grounds, general population, you notice that most of the prisoners were white. Most of the prisoners in the general population in the 1960s in San Quentin and some of these other prisons that Johnny Cash would visit were white, or some variation of white, Caucasian of some sort, because there's no one that's absolutely perfectly white. That's actually was created. White people were actually created out of the Baltics. The Baltics are up there where Russia is, where NATO is freaking out right now, with the Russians up there from the Caucasus Mountains. They were Caucasus. The name Caucasus went and turned into Caucasian, and they were a mixture of all those Baltic tribes that lived up in that area for hundreds of thousands of years, like everybody else lived on the planet Earth. And that mixture created the pigment of the skin to be lighter color with the eyes and the hair and all that crazy stuff. And so, but that's what came down into Europe in mass numbers. And that's why we consider those people white. And that's where it came from originally. But if you look at the prisons, a lot of those photos from the 1960s and 1970s, even in the South, a lot of the photos were prisoners, they were white. According to the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, this is pretty recent, as of 2014, there are 2,220,300 adults incarcerated in U.S. federal and state prisons and county jails in 2014. About 0.91% of the adults, 1 in 110 in the U.S. resident population. Additionally, 4,751,400 adults in 2013, 1 in 51, were on probation or on parole. And that's a lot of prisoners. Now, there's a reason that I'm going to get to as to why we have a lot of prisoners. When you further look at the statistics of the prisoners and you try to go into the population or the makeup, which we're going to talk about in a second as I get to it, but look at the increase. Look at the increase that has taken place here over a number of years. April 3rd, 2014, the total incarcerated people in the U.S. is a staggering 2.4 million. Okay, now this is the number that blew me away, because that is a 500% increase over the past 30 years in prison population. So let's go back 30 years from this statistic in 2014. 2014 to 2004, 2004 to 1994, 1994 to 1984. 1984, I was 24 years old, and I was working at K-Day here in Los Angeles in 1984. So from 1984 to 2014, a 500% increase in the prison population in the United States of America. That's about 1 in every 108 adults was in prison or in jail in 2012, over a 30-year span. That is mind-boggling statistics. Over the last 30 years, an increase of 500% in terms of our prison population since 1984. Over 500%. Staggering. Staggering when you think about it. And that begs the question as to why. I mean, did this just happen because there's more cats doing criminals? Did this just happen because there's more people doing stuff? Lee, can I get a plug in here? My battery's going dead right here on this one. You got your battery cable somewhere? It's in this one? Oh, it's in that one? Oh, I can unplug it? You sure? We got that other camera going? Okay. All right. Yeah, you got enough juice on there. Okay, I got to plug this one in over here. Yes, it's technical stuff, folks. www.thepowerofvoices.com. We just do it for you right here in front of you. Okay, now check this out. Now, I hope I can read this because sometimes I have a little problem in reading small print, even with my glasses on. Trends in the United States correctional history. In 1925, there were roughly, this is for all federal prisons in the United States of America. In 1925, Bonnie and Clyde times, submachine gun, Tommy gun times, Capone running Chicago, the 5 mafia families running the New York and New Jersey and Philadelphia, and the Irish gangster mobsters like the Kennedys running Boston, and in 1925 we had Mickey Cohen out here, and Bugsy Siegel came out here in the 1940s. And they were banging heads with each other. And down there in South Florida, they had the Italian stuff going on there. You had the KKK in the South running amok and crazy. At full strength, that nutcase that's just passed away, that Reverend Stern, who we had in here a couple of weeks ago, talking about he's going to break down and bust down the KKK. You had all these crazy, maniacal nutcases. You had the pedophilers. You had the 459 break-in suspects. You had the car, so you had car stealing. You had horse stealing. You still had public. There still was public hangings in the West, in Wyoming. I mean, this is what we're talking about. 1925. All right. In 1925, the population of America was roughly, in 1925, was just over 100 million people, about 120 million or so people in 1925. That's 2/3 less people there are now in America. If you can imagine rolling around this country with 2/3 less people around you, that was 1925. Across America, lots of wide open spaces to get lost. All right, so in 1925, there were roughly 100,000 people in federal prisons. 100,000 people in federal prisons in 1925. All right, well, let's jump 20 years ahead, okay? Let's go to 1946. Roughly in 1946, there was about 175,000 people in federal prisons. So if you look at the increase over 20 years, 50 to 75,000 people, and I'm trying to push the numbers up on this graph, which aren't exactly perfect. There's not broken down to small increments that I'm looking at. Now let's go another 20 years. 1946 to 1966. I was 6 years old in 1966. I was born in 1960. I'm a Leo and a Virgo. Yeah, I'm on the fence. I swing both ways, baby.
With your $30 bill.
With my $30 bill. That's it. A $30 bill, we're going to create a $30 bill. Okay. In 1966, according to federal statistics, there were 200,000 people in federal prisons. So from 1925 to 1965, that 40-year span, it only increased about 100,000 people, and the population of America went up from about 100 or so, 110, 115, 120 million people in 1925 to about 180 million or so in 190 million. It wasn't quite 200 million in the 60s yet, in the mid-1960s. So the population really increased, and the baby boom generation was kicking in. And that's what really made the population increase. But the prison population kind of was steady. It was steady, and it didn't grow with the population. One would think you'd have more population, you'd have more crime. But that wasn't true. The statistics show, and the correlation is the population really went up, almost doubled, but the crime did not. Federal crime. So we're talking about federal crime. We're talking about the hardcore dudes. Okay? So interesting correlation. Now, in 1978, okay? So I'm going to say about 1978, 1976. I was 18 years old in 1978. So roughly 10 years from 1966. All right? I just graduated from high school, Poly High School in Sun Valley. And in 1978, the prison population, the federal prison population was it was about 375,000 people on this graph. Okay? But the population of America had sailed way over 200 million in 1978. We're talking about 250 million people or so. 275 million people or so were living in America and born in America in 1978. My numbers aren't perfect, but they're going to be more or less right around if you start fact-checking me. They're not going to be too far off. But the prison population wasn't even 400,000 in 1978 in the federal prisons. And remember I talked about on all the different programs like the Johnny Cash stuff and when I've gone on the internet and I was looking at videos of prison populations and old pictures and movies and of real prisons, there were a lot of white people in prison. A lot of white people in prison. More Latinos were growing, not much, because we didn't have the mass immigration, legal and illegal, to this country yet from the South. The black population prisoners were growing. They were growing, no doubt, by the 1970s. And so the color of the prison population was changing. So sometime between 1965-ish and 1980, we started to see a transition and a population growth in the racial makeup of the typical federal prison. Okay? And now this is mind-boggling what happens now. This is the mind blower. Okay? Let's just jump 20 years to 1998. From 1978 to 1998, 20 years. Okay, so from 1925 to 1978, the prison population went from about 100,000, 150,000 to about 450,000. So in 50 years, it increased 3 times, right? Roughly. Watch what happens. And I pose to you right now with this argument, this did not happen perchance. This did not happen just because. There is a contrived plan. Conspiratory, you may want to say, I don't care. But you don't get these kind of increases without something being decided upon to make happen. Simple and sweet. Things don't change. I just proved it to you. Over 50 years, the prison population only went up to about 450,000 from 150,000. But the population of America grew to 250 million. Something stinks. And I know what it is. 1998. This is going to be mind-boggling to you. 1,400,000 people are incarcerated in federal prisons in 1998. So from 1978 to 1998, over 1 million people are incarcerated, and most of them are African Americans, black, and Hispanic. The white prison population starts to drop dramatically. And you say, oh, because there's more black people being born, there's more Mexican people, or Latin people, El Salvador. No! Today's population in America is 227 million white people, or what they consider white, or what you would call white. Yeah, the largest population in America. Yeah. with the least people in prison, when they used to have most of the people in friggin' prison, and the African American black population was bigger then than it is now statistically. In Los Angeles, in my lifetime, the statistical population of African American people has dropped to almost nothing. Now, you telling me that just happens? You wake up one day and have a bowl of friggin' Cheerios, and that just happens? Things don't happen like that. 1 million people get incarcerated in 20 years, and for 50 years, it only goes up to 400,000, and the population of America jumps to 250 million, and in 20 years, 1 million more people get incarcerated, and they're Hispanic and black? Are you friggin' kidding me? You put me on the RNC and the DNC, I'll piss a lot of people off. I'll probably get executed the minute I walk out. I'm aggravated. I'm really aggravated. You ready? 2014, when this chart runs out. I'm just going to jump 2 years and say 2016. I'm just going to add a friggin' 500,000 people to it, okay? Why not? They're jumping like that. In 2014, there are 1.6 million people incarcerated. Hey, you want to take me to the bank on the numbers? They're not perfect. I don't care. Who cares? The numbers are almost perfect. $1.6 million people in 2014. So from 1998, within 20 years, within 26 years, we almost have 2 million. Now we have 2.4 million people in jail. And the population of America is roughly 325 million people. And most of them are Latino. Yeah. The biggest population of prisoners going into prison now are people of Hispanic background, brown people, and black folks, African Americans. Not too many Asians, and not a whole bunch of white people. Now go figure. You can't fight statistics. They tell you the truth. You may not like it. You may not see it. You may not understand it. But I promise you, you listen to Jesse T, and you enter Jesse Terrero's world, according to Terrero, live at 5 and straight on the point, you're going to get one man's opinion about it. Why do we have so many friggin' prisoners all of a sudden? Think about that one. Think about that one. The United States is the world's leader in incarceration, with 2.4 million people currently in the nation's prisons and jails, a 500% increase over the last 40 years. Changes in sentencing laws and policy, not changes in crime rates, explain most of the increase. These trends have resulted. I'm going to repeat this because this is the answer. Sorry. Can you imagine living right next to me and being my neighbor? Here's the answer. I'm going to repeat it again. Changes in sentencing law and policy, not changes in crime rates, explain most of the increase. Changes in sentencing law and policy, not changes in increase, explain most of the crime rate increase. Changes in sentencing law and policy, not changes in crime rates, explain most of the increase. Do I need to say it again? There's your answer. It has nothing to do with the color of your friggin' skin. It has nothing to do if your name is Meatballs of Harry or Grabber Poofy or Adi Salami or Bin Fartin. It has nothing to do with your name. These trends have resulted in prison overcrowding and fiscal burdens on states to accommodate a rapidly expanding penal system, despite increasing evidence that large-scale incarceration is not an effective means of achieving public safety. I could be like a TLC or Discovery Channel announcer, couldn't I? Hey, any producers out there want to hire me? I'm cheap, and I'm easy. I'm a good date. I don't ask for much. Just give me a burrito and a Dr. Pepper. Here's the reason. It has been shaped and designed to get your money. The largest employer in the United States of America, one of them is our prison system and all the businesses that relate to it. The incarceration of people makes big money. The legal system, the attorneys, the lawyers, the legal aspects, the document drawers, the deliverers of paperwork, the courthouse. You see how monster these courthouses are? The prisons, the private prisons. It's all about getting your money. They want your money, honey, and they don't care who they got to put behind bars, so they're going to put the ones that have the least amount of money to defend themselves in any way, and that happens to be the Latinos today because they don't even speak friggin' English half the time, and they hire some stupid Latin-speaking attorney who takes them and rips them off and makes a deal with the public defender and the private whatever, and they throw them in jail. And the African Americans have been treated horribly that way. And the white, stupid people who can't read are treated that way too because the jail's filled full of people who can't defend themselves and don't have the money to defend themselves in our two-tier legal system where Hillary Clinton can lie up her yin-yang and get out, and these people can lie like O.J. Simpson can lie. And Robert Blake, the actor, can lie. Did I cover a whole friggin' gamut? These people are being abused. We are being abused. This is why we have 4 million people in friggin' prison in this country. Not because they're all bad. It's because they can't defend themselves. They're easy targets. And let's change the rules a little bit because we can make $50,000 a year on everybody we can incarcerate. And a ticket for parking goes from $75 to $750 when you miss it for one time. It's incarceration. They want your money. They want it they want it now, and they want you dead and gone. That's what they want, and they're going to kill you any way they can. And this is the way they can wipe out a whole 4 million people in this country. Thank you very much. The Jesse T Show live at 5. You want to solve this? Understand the argument. The Brown Beauty is off duty. That's straight on the point.